Boatworks today is sponsored by Total Boat and Alexial Yacht Coatings, as well as supported by the generosity from the beautiful folks over on Patreon. Thank you so much. So welcome back, everybody. Hope you're all having a fantastic weekend. I hope you all had an excellent Thanksgiving, if that's something that you and your family celebrate. My name is Andy with Boatworks today, and this week I think is going to be the absolute last video on this shop build, because minus some organization and some loose ends, this project is done. And because this project is pretty much coming to a close, I want to take this week just to kind of go through and look back over everything, total up all of the costs for this project from start to finish, as well as kind of talk a little bit about some of the things that were kind of going on in the background that really needed to fall into place in order for any of this to work. If any of those steps had gone sideways on me, this project would have been dead in the water. And unfortunately, out of probably close to a dozen of those things that needed to fall into place, every single one was out of my control. So with that said, I'm going to take a little bit of a breather and let's get started. All right, so first things first, I just want to get one thing right out of the way right away, and that's as far as where the money came from in order to do this. Now, trust me, we're not money bags, all right? Not at all. Now, when I was talking about that there were a number of steps that had to fall into place in order for this project to happen, that was not an exaggeration. Now, going back almost pretty much a year ago, to December of last year, we were still living in Wisconsin. We were knee deep, actually neck deep, in remodeling our old house with the anticipation of, at that point, we weren't quite sure if we were going to be staying or listing the house. Unfortunately, we had already started tearing the house apart before we even had the inclination or the idea or possibility of moving. So we did a little bit of a deep dive on the house, a little bit more than we probably would have if we had known from the get-go that we were going to be just basically getting it ready to sell. Now, selling that house was the key point that had to happen in order for anything else to kind of fall into place. Now, at that time, the housing market in our particular area, again, we were in northern Wisconsin, the market for that area over the past year and a half, for name your reasons, was doing very well. So as timing-wise, as far as getting that house ready to sell, it was a seller's market. It was a good time to kind of cater that kind of an idea. So basically, at that same time, my oldest daughter also kind of was poking around online. She said, hey, take a look at this house, which ended up being the house that we purchased. And one thing led to another, and within a month, so now we're into I believe sometime in January, late January, early February, we had kind of made up our mind that we were going to be looking to move. Now, that also meant that we needed to finish our existing house, get that listed for sale, find a potential buyer, go through that whole process, get that closed in time to close on our new house, get everything moved, have enough money, profit from that sale in order to make this project go. I mean, it had to cover this project 100%. Because I was not taking out a loan on this project. It was one of those things where it either had to work or it wasn't going to work. And then on top of that, everything needed to close in time to actually make that transition, get here in time to actually have enough time on the calendar to find contractors in an area that I don't know anybody, or really I didn't know anybody here. Find the contractors, find the right contractors, not the hacks, just trying to navigate that minefield. Get them lined up to, hopefully within a timeline before, so that all these projects can get done before the snow flies. Because once the snow flies, if you're not at a certain point, you're pretty much screwed. So the timeline for all of this was absolutely critical. And then setting all that aside, and then looking at, taking on basically a finishing project at a point where there are a lot of material shortages and, things that are in stock or available. They're probably 3, 4, 5 times more than what they would or should be, going back a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. So again, and that definitely impacts your budget. So there was just a lot of moving parts that had to fall into place. And like I said, if any one of them had gone sideways on me, hosed. All right, so getting to the numbers here. Now, as I just kind of mentioned here, all of the funds for this project came from the sale of our house. So again, not knowing what all this was going to cost initially, I needed to make sure that, or at least hope, that we were going to be clearing enough on the sale of our old house after commissions and moving costs and roll all that in, that there was going to be enough left over to actually fund this project. Now, being a seller's market at that time, looking back, luckily it worked out. Barely, but it did work out. I mean, it's not 100%, but I'd say probably 99%, and well, that's close enough for me. So step one with this whole project was getting utilities run up here, because when we bought this property, this was just a shell of a building. There was no gas, there was no electric, no insulation, there was nothing here. So getting those utilities up here was really the first pivotal step, because without power up here, it's pretty hard to run any saws or do anything else that's going to be involved with finishing out this building. Now, the utility company that we deal with up here is Xcel Energy, and luckily this is the first place we've ever lived where Xcel actually covered both the gas and the electric. So I was only having to deal with one particular company. So I met with our local rep here, and going into that, I had no idea what kind of costs I was going to be looking at to have that stuff run up. Total length of the run was around 700 feet from the road up to the building here. And you're going through some pretty gnarly terrain. I mean, it's a lot of rock, and it's not going to be a quick process. So going into this, I talking with people that basically they were just spitballing. Like, oh, you need to be prepared for 12 to 15, maybe even $20,000 to have utilities run up here. Now, luckily, that was not the case. The person that I was working with, they were an angel. I mean, no stretch of that expression here. I was prepared. I was puckering, but I was prepared for around 8 to 10. When they came back and they said that both utilities could be run up and in place for less than $4,000, specifically $3,700. I damn near kissed the guy. I mean, I didn't. I gave him a handshake and said, "Thank you very much." But that was huge. I mean, that would have put a big squeeze on everything else in the project. And for that kind of a potential squeeze to happen at the very first step, when there's still a lot more that needs to happen, that would have hurt. But luckily, that worked out. So utilities run up here, both gas and electric, 3,700 hooked up and ready to go. Now the next thing on my list was getting the insulation in place, because it was starting to come in the summertime, and I tell you, bare metal building, it was like a friggin' oven in here. So insulation needed to get done. Now, before the insulation could actually come in, at least for the ceiling, I needed to get that sheathed. And as you know, I ended up going with OSB for the ceiling as well as on the walls. But I needed to get the ceiling covered first so that when the insulation guys came in, there was something to actually support that. Now, in total, as far as all the wall coverings and the ceiling, I went through about 140 sheets, give or take. So we got the total cost on the wall coverings and for the ceiling, just on the materials alone, that was $3,000 in OSB. Now, moving on to the insulation, as you know, I kind of did a highlight video on them. They were out of Houghton, Hancock area, I believe. But they came in, and they had a crew of 6, 8 guys, 3, 4 big trucks, and they were in and out in a day. I mean, you want to talk about getting your shit done quick. These guys got her done. Now, that one day, from the time they got here to the time they left, that building went from having nothing to being 100% fully insulated. And the total bill on the insulation came right in at, I got a lot of numbers in front of me, so I got to have a cheat sheet here. Where are we? Insulation. The total bill on that insulation came in at $11,000, which, to be quite honest, I didn't think was all that bad. Now, just as a quick recap, we did 10, 11, 12 in some spots, inches of open cell spray foam up in the attic or in the ceiling. And then in the walls, we used, it's a product made by Applegate. It's a dense pack, wet pack. Not really wet, more kind of damp than anything. But it's a product by Applegate, and it's basically, it's a dense packed cellulose. And we're a month and a half into the heating system, or heating season here now, being late November. The stuff seems to be doing its job. So far, so good. And then at that point, with all the insulation in place, then I could actually get the walls covered. Because in order for them to insulate the walls, well, I couldn't have anything over top of the walls. So insulation done, walls covered, and again, that was another hell of a process. So I had some help along the way. Thank you to my brother. Thank you, Josh. And then the next thing was getting all the cement work for the addition, as well as I needed to put in a floor drain in the existing shop here, because this is where I'm parking the tractor, and I'm using that to blow the snow here. After you come in and everything melts off, that water needs to have some place to go. So in addition to putting in the additional slab out on the side of the building here, he also had to do a cut in on the floor in here, and then obviously do all the piping. Now the total bill on that came in at $15,500, which was a little bit more than, I'm going to be honest, a little bit more than what I was anticipating going into it. Now after seeing all that was involved, start to finish, for getting the floor drain in and then getting that slab prep, getting all the excavation done, because there were some boulders that he had to pull out of here. They're damn near the size of a car. So there was a lot more prep required in order to actually take the first step of doing some forming and pouring the mud. So Louis, thank you, buddy. But so he came in, and when it's all said and done, I did think that it was a fair price. So he did a fantastic job. Slab is in place, and it worked with I guess the timeline that it needed to happen. Because once you start getting close to freezing temperatures, all of a sudden that complicates things. So then with the cement work done, now things priorities-wise were starting to shift over onto me. Now I did all of the electric in here. I did have some help from my neighbor. I don't think he wants me mentioning his name. But he did help me getting the initial service box and the panel installed on the side of the building, the socket meter. But the material costs for the electric, so meaning the wire, the conduit, all the boxes, the covers, the outlets, the switches, everything that's involved with that, that came in right around $1,500. Now, something that I kind of realized here is this is where I realized the material shortages the most, specifically with the conduit and the outlet switches. Now, just as a quick example, the conduit, 1/2-inch EMT conduit. Locally, I was able to get that here for about $3.50 per stick, or per section, 10-foot sections. Well, I wiped out everybody in the area. We had 3 or 4 hardware stores, and I wiped every single one of them out. And at that point, then I was stuck having to kind of look at other suppliers outside of the area, about an hour or so away. And they had everything that you needed, but rather than having a $3.50 piece of conduit, they were charging closer to $25 for a single 10-foot section. You overpay just for the sake of trying to keep that ball rolling. So, whatever. It's just you just learn not to go back there again unless you're really, really desperate. All right, so the next on the list was going to be the heat. Now, every time I've had to have heating work done, whenever I've gotten that estimate, it's always more expensive than what I thought it was going to be by quite a bit. Now, coming into this, I was thinking it was going to be right around $8,000, maybe $9,000, because it's a pretty straightforward install here. I mean, basically it's a small boiler, and then I'm doing basically hot water baseboard or registers around the perimeter. Nothing real fancy. Now, so for the boiler, the install, all the registers, let's see, I want to say in total there was 55 feet of high output registers to get the heat installed. That bill came in at $12,500. Again, a little bit more than what I was expecting, but it is what it is. I was working with someone that I knew I could trust, and they came in when they were here when they said they were going to be here, and they were done when they said they were going to be done, and it's working fantastic. And so far, we've had some nights where it was down in the single digits, and I don't think this boiler at any time since it's been installed has had to run for more than 15, 20 minutes at a time. And then it's off for 2, maybe 3 hours. So good install on the heat, and then the insulation, it seems to be doing its thing. So now the last 2 remaining items were the lighting as well as these air scrubbers. And they're the 2 most recent things that I've kind of touched on here. Now the lighting, I went with, it's a company out of California called American Green Lighting, and working with Jim Uno there, great guy to work with, great company to work with. All the lights set up in here, which I gotta say, I think it looks pretty good. I'm not using any more box lights. It's a lot more straightforward, and I'm still fine-tuning some of the settings on the camera, because the lighting here is much different than it was back at the old shop. much better. But I think I'm getting close to having it dialed in. But so the lighting package came in right around $2,000. And for high output, high CRI, long life LED lights, that's a pretty fair price. And being an American company, that's also an added bonus as well. Now for the air scrubbers, the scrubbers that I went with here, I went with 3 units. 2 are installed right now. The third is basically going in storage because that's going to be the dedicated unit for inside the addition. And the company that I went with was called Industrial Made, but the total bill on those 3 units came in just around around $11,500, give or take. So again, it's buy once, cry once. These are going to be units that I'll be able to use for the next 15, 20 or more years. So now, as I mentioned, the addition that's going on here in the spring, that's not going to be happening until spring. Now, as far as what we're doing there, it's a 20 wide by 30 deep, and then on the interior, the ceiling height is going to be right around 9'3", give or take. So right around that ballpark. Now, the total bill on that, again, this is estimated. Prices may fluctuate on the materials, a little bit between now and when that happens in the spring. But the estimated bill on that is coming right around $31,000 for a finished shell. Now, that's not going to include any of the insulation or the wiring or anything like that, but it's going to be in a finished shell on the exterior. So all in, when you tally everything up, all in, and this is also including the anticipated cost for that addition in the spring. All in, this entire project, start to finish, looks like it's going to be coming in right around $105,000. Now, that sounds like a shit ton of money to me. Right? Well, it is. I mean, there's just no way of looking at that any other way. It is. Especially when I built my Wisconsin shop, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 years ago, however long ago that was. That was bare land, and I built that brand new to include having to put in utilities, wells, hook into the septic, everything, start to finish. I got that entire project done. I think it even included the land purchase, but that came in at $132,000, completely finished, and it was a larger building than this. Same height, but larger. So at this point, after nearly 10 months of work, 7 days a week for the past 10 months, I think I'm at a point where I can finally say that this project is done, at least for this winter. All of the major components that needed to be in place are in place. Now there's still some organizing and some detail work that needs to happen. There's a lot of organizing actually, but as far as the punch list items, all of the electrical is run, all the conduit and wiring is pulled, but at least in the main shop area looking around here, there's still 40 outlets that I need to actually wire. Not a big deal, but it's just another one of those things that's just going to take some time. Shelving and organizing in the storage room, and just kind of getting this area kind of laid out where it needs to be so it's going to be functional for the rest of the winter. Now, with that said, the next video that you're going to see coming out on this channel, I believe, is going to be back up on this girl, finally, after a bit of a hiatus. But I think that's going to be the next video coming up on cue. Now, because this whole project has been what it has been, again, working 7 days a week for the past 10 months, I think the best way for me to kind of cap all this off is, rather than trying to do some work on this and still trying to get some work done on the building here, trying to get it finished, I think I'm just going to bite the bullet and take some time off. In total, I'm going to have about a week's worth of work to actually get this building 100% completed. And then at that point, because really I haven't taken any time to do anything with my family or girls or anything since we moved here, I'm going to take a few days, and we're going to do something as a family that we haven't done. We haven't had a trip as a family in 11 years. Since my oldest has been born, we've never done that. So we're going to take a few days and just kind of take a step back away from this, spend some time together, and before winter really sets in. And with that said, I think this is going to be a good place to put a cork in this video and end this project. So as always, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it kind of interesting to kind of follow along, start to finish, what all has been involved in getting this place ready. to where it's at right now. And if you did, hit that thumbs up button. If you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you're notified every week when new videos come out. If you have any questions, comments, let me know down below. I'll do my best to follow up with you. And as always, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. And I'll see you next on the 12th. Take care.
This has been a Boatworks Today production.